What took Bugatti 2 decades to build took a single man only a year, back in the 80s. On a cold October morning, at a testing facility in Ohio, a Chevy Corvette reached speeds of around 254 miles an hour. A monster was born that very night. Volkswagen spent so much time building the Bugatti Veyron, a hypercar capable of going 253 miles an hour, just about a mile an hour under the record set by this unknown Corvette. This is the story of the Callaway Sledgehammer, the infamous missile of the 80s. We have all seen these before, cars stripped of their interiors, fitted with parachutes, and running on volatile racing fuels just to survive a single 50-second burst of speed. This is what people thought the Sledgehammer was all about. Some random one-off engine on wheels built for a singular moment of glory, destined to be pushed into a museum or back onto a trailer the moment the clock stopped. But that assumption is wrong. The Sledgehammer was built under a set of rules that should have made 250 miles per hour impossible. And the reason it was built at all had very little to do with breaking records for the sake of ego. In the mid-80s, the Corvette was in a difficult position. The C4 generation had a world-class chassis, but its engines were struggling to meet increasingly strict emissions rules while providing the power customers expected. Usually, a large manufacturer like GM would solve this internally. But the chief engineer of the Corvette, Dave McClellan, did something unusual. He looked at the work being done by Callaway Cars, a small engineering firm in Connecticut, and he saw a solution. Instead of building a faster Corvette themselves, GM decided to outsource the performance. They created a regular production trim that used the code RPOB2K. This was a landmark moment in automotive business. You could walk into a local Chevy dealership, check a box on the order form, and for an extra $19,000, your Corvette would be shipped from the assembly line in Kentucky directly to Callaway's shop. While GM warranted the chassis, Callaway provided the warranty for the high-performance powertrain, with both being serviceable at your local Chevy dealer. But because the Callaway Corvettes were sold through Chevy dealers, they had to behave like Chevys. They had to pass California emissions. They had to be reliable in bumper-to-bumper traffic. They had to have functioning air conditioning, power windows, and radio. When Reeves Callaway decided to build a high-speed demonstrator based on this program, he didn't abandon these rules. He leaned into them. He didn't want to build a race car that happened to look like a Corvette. He wanted to build the ultimate version of the B2K production car. The Sledgehammer was intended to be a flagship that proved how strong the partnership between Callaway and GM was. The issue was simple, but brutal. The car had to be able to hit 250 miles an hour, but it also had to be a car you could drive to the grocery store. Engineering for 250 miles an hour is not the same as engineering for 150. As speed increases, the air doesn't only get harder to push out of the way, it also starts to act like a solid. The power required to overcome drag increases by the cube of the speed. To move a C4 Corvette from 200 miles per hour to 250 miles per hour, Callaway needed roughly 900 horsepower. In 1988, 900 horsepower was an absurd figure. For comparison, a standard Corvette of that year made 245. To achieve this, Callaway used a heavy-duty NASCAR engine block. They installed a forged crankshaft, specialised pistons, and a twin-turbo system, pushing 22 pounds of boost. The final output was 898 horsepower and over 770 pound-feet of torque. But generating the power was actually the easy part. The real challenge was thermal equilibrium. At 250 miles an hour, an engine produces a staggering amount of heat. If you open up the front of the car to let more air into the radiator, you create what is called cooling drag. The air enters the engine bay, hits the firewall, and creates a high-pressure pocket that acts like a parachute. While the standard Corvette was a bottom breather that pulled air from under the nose, Callaway's solution was a sophisticated piece of bodywork designed by Paul Deutschmann, known as the Aero Body. It wasn't just a styling kit. The Aero Body introduced strategic front-facing ducts to ram air directly into the intercoolers and radiator. while carefully managing how that air exited to prevent lift. By managing the airflow so precisely, they could keep the engine cool without ruining the car's ability to slice through the air. This focus on mechanical flow extended to the interior too. The Sledgehammer didn't have a roll cage that required you to climb over bars to sit down. It had the standard leather sports seats, it had the factory sound system, it had the digital dashboard. The engineering goal wasn't just to survive 250 miles per hour, it was to be comfortable while doing it. The Sledgehammer was so far a demonstration of what the C4 could achieve. But the story got real the very night the Sledgehammer was pushed to the limits. If you don't want to miss out on anything cars, make sure to subscribe. On October 26, 1988, the Sledgehammer was ready for its final test at the Transportation Research Center in Ohio. This is the moment where the story usually involves a team of engineers unloading a car from a trailer and spending hours tuning it for the specific atmospheric conditions of the day. But Reeves Callaway and his lead engineer, John Lingenfelter, chose a different path. They didn't trailer the Sledgehammer to Ohio, they drove it there. They drove the car from their headquarters in Connecticut, all the way to Ohio. It was a 700-mile trip on public highways. They sat in traffic, they used the cruise control, they listened to the radio. This drive was a calculated business move. It proved that the 898 horsepower engine wasn't a grenade tuned for a single run. It was a stable, integrated system. When they arrived at the track, the conditions were less than ideal. It was a cold, grey morning. Lingenfelter climbed into the car wearing a standard driving suit. Instead of modern laptops, which were not yet part of trackside tuning, the team relied on Callaway's own onboard data logging system to monitor the engine in real time. The run lasted only 51 seconds. As the car accelerated past 200 miles an hour, Lingenfelter noted that it felt remarkably stable. It wasn't searching for grip, and there was no terrifying lift from the front end. The aero body was doing exactly what it was designed to do, holding the car to the pavement while managing the massive thermal load of the twin turbos. The clock stopped at 254.76 miles per hour. It was a world record for a road-legal car, a title it would effectively hold for nearly 2 decades. But the most significant part of the day happened after the record was set. They didn't pull the engine apart to see what had broken. They didn't change the tyres. They turned the air conditioning back on, pulled out of the testing facility, and drove the car 700 miles back to Connecticut. To the public, this seemed like the ultimate flex. It looked like Callaway had built the greatest supercar in history and was simply showing off its reliability. But this leads to a glaring contradiction. If you have the fastest, most reliable car in the world, a car that can embarrass Ferrari and Porsche, the logical business move is to sell it. You would imagine Callaway taking orders, building 50 Sledgehammers, and becoming a billionaire manufacturer. But they didn't. The Sledgehammer remained a one-off. Callaway had every reason to sell it, but chose not to, and there's a clear reason to it. In the world of high-level automotive engineering, your ability to get a contract with a company like Aston Martin, Holden, or Mazda depends on your ability to solve unsolvable problems. These large OEMs often struggle with specific hurdles, how to turbocharge an existing engine without it overheating, or how to make a car aerodynamic without making it ugly. By building the Sledgehammer, Callaway was sending a message to the entire industry. He was saying, hey, we solved the thermal issues of a 900 horsepower engine. We solved the high-speed stability issues of a front-engine car. We did it using factory components, and we made it reliable enough to drive across the country. The Sledgehammer was a proof of their competence. It was a marketing expense for a service-based business. Every time a magazine wrote about the 254-mile-an-hour Corvette, Callaway's phone rang. Not from customers wanting to buy the car, but from manufacturers wanting to hire the engineers who built it. But engineering a car is a thing, and selling it is a completely different challenge. Manufacturing cars is an incredibly difficult way to make money. The overhead, the crash testing, the global distribution, and the liability are enough to bankrupt even the most talented engineers. Reeves Callaway knew this. He wasn't interested in being the next Enzo Ferrari. The Sledgehammer didn't need to be sold to be successful. It had already done its job. It reframed the Corvette, not as a budget sports car, but as a platform for world-class engineering. It proved that the limitations we assume exist in road cars are often just the result of corporate compromise, not physics. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss anything cars and business.